Hello everyone, welcome back here to Canning Farms. My name is Gavin, and in today's video the weather's a bit bad outside, so it's a bit mixed, so there's not a whole pile happening this week. So in this week's video what I decided to do was just sit down and talk about some of the pros and cons of contract rearing, because a lot of people are asking me, look, is it a good or a bad thing to do? So I just said if I give out some basic pros and cons, then if someone's interested in it, they can make up their own mind then at that stage. So what I'll do is I'll start off with some of the pros, some of the positive things about the contract rearing. I'll talk about some of the negatives as well. There's not a whole pile of negatives, and they're kind of a bit, they're not important really, but and then what I'll do then is I'll talk about some of the things that I've learned coming from a suckling background into contract rearing for the dairy herd. There's some things there that are slightly different and things that kind of caught me out at the start. So I'll just share them with you as well, because like that, there isn't a whole pile of information out there. So the very first pro I have, or the kind of the most important one I have, is that it's actually a monthly income. You're paid every month. So at the end of the month there, you're paid in, rather than if when I was suckling there, you sold the cattle at the end of the year and you waited for your payments and everything was in sort of one big lump, and you owed a lot of money during the year. This is a steady cash flow, so it means there that you don't have a whole pile owed over the year. Of course you will in the springtime when the numbers are low or whatever, but as the year progresses there, at least you're able to pay that off, and at the end of the year then there's no big bills or anything like that. The second thing, and another big positive about the contract rearing, is that the cost of the animal is taken out. So basically in my agreement here with the two lads that I contract rear for, they pay for anything to do with the animals. So meal, vet, doses, vaccinations, anything like that is paid for by the owner. Basically what I supply then is my own time, my own land, the electricity and water. But when you take out that expenditure of the animal, that's a big lot of money to be taken out. Like if you think about your suckler cow is costing 700, 800, 900 euro a year to raise, and then produce a calf that might only be making 950, 1,000. You know, you're sitting down, you're making only 50 or 100 euro. When you take that level of expenditure out of the system, it's a big thing. Carrying on then from the cash flow each month, say if you're a young farmer or someone who's starting out and trying to stock the land, what I did here when I started out was got stocking loans. And then what happens is at the end of the day you sell your stock, and then you might have enough money to keep maybe 5 or 6 animals. And by the time you progress, to get 50 or 60 animals, it's taken 9, 10 years to get there. With this, it allows you to get paid every month, and if you want to, if you're still working off farm, you can put that money aside. So instead of when you're ready to farm yourself, instead of going in and getting a stocking loan, you have money there that you can go in and then you're making profit straight away, or you don't have this big level of expenditure put over yourself. Again, kind of along the same sort of lines there, is that you have no money tied up in stock. So instead of going out and having 30,000 of your money tied up in Wayland's for the whole year, that money isn't tied up. You're only paying for your own bills, so therefore you have that money available to you at all. Another thing there now is that as the animals come in, they come into your own herd number. So therefore you, for all your payments and everything else, you have the land stocked. So without you going out and buying animals are coming into you, into your herd number, and for all your payments, your acres, things like that, your single farm payment, all that sort of stuff, you have your stock and numbers there. So therefore you don't have to be going out and again buying things or buying animals to try and stock the land. A big thing for me here was coming from the sucklers, that look, we all know that sucklers these days when you're working off farm, they're as mad as hatters. Like, you know, they're not used to seeing people, and they might be all right with you, but then the minute you get a bit of help in, they're absolutely wild. They're going mad. If I was doing a job here, and say bringing in the cattle to weigh them or anything like that, I used to have to think about it for a week and try and get someone to help me and everything. Whereas with the dairy stock, they're so easily handled. They're hand reared, so therefore they're so quiet. They follow you around the place. Like, you know, people are saying to me, how do you get them in for AI, and how do you get them in for dose, and how do you get them in like this? I open the gate and they walk out, they follow you. They want to be with you, they want to be with a human. So that's one thing, is they're very easily handled. A big thing and a big positive here that I find with rearing the dairy stock is that you're not dependent on markets outside of your own farm. So I know that every month I'm getting paid X amount of money. So therefore I'm not buying an animal, raising it for a year and a half, trying to bring it to the factory, and then the beef price has collapsed, or the market in the marts has totally shut down or collapsed, or Do you know, it's great at the minute. Weanlings are on fire at the minute. That's fantastic. But you still have to go out and buy weanlings at a high price, bring them into your land and run them. And then when you're finished, when you're ready to sell them, it could be completely changed. Like if you're getting, I don't know what it is, €5 a kilo, whatever it is now. And then, sure, when I was doing the beef, it was 3. And it could genuinely dip to that again. So that's one thing there, is that your uncertainty is kind of taken out of the equation there when you're looking down at your finances. It allows you to plan for the future and to plan for expansion. For me here, I can sit down and go, okay, if I can take in another 20 heifers, I could actually compete to rent land at X amount of money. It allows you then as well to improve the farm infrastructure. So the likes of paddocks, reseeding, I have a new crush there, facility you see in other videos. It allows you to put money into those things, whereas before I never had any money left over basically to put into those sort of things. It was always then going and getting a loan and you're putting yourself into more debt. Now this sort of thing allows me to plan for the future and allows me to put in things that are making life a lot easier for me. Another thing there that I find there, which is very good, is that in my setup here, what I do is I take them in at maybe 3, 4, 5 months old, and they stay with me after bolt, and they go back just before they're calving. So that means that the calf is coming into me off milk, so it's reared. Therefore, I'm not going out buying sucks, and a few of them get pneumonia and dying and things like that. You're kind of taking out some of the risk there, because the animals are coming in, they're already on meal, they're already in their groups, they know each other, and they're coming from 1 herd, 2 herds, they're not being bought in, they're 2 closed herds. So, and then the final thing that I find there about the contract rearing, I know this is just my situation, that I was able to go full-time farming. It's completely different for other people. It depends on your family, if you have kids, or if you're married, or you have a big mortgage or things like that. But just for in my situation, it allowed me there, at least for the moment, to be full-time farming. When I was suckling or dry stock, that was not an option. It really wasn't. Now I can actually sit down and be more positive about things. I actually enjoy farming now again, whereas before I always seen it as a headache. I suppose you need a passion for it, and I lost that when I was suckling because the money was so bad. You're calving cows at 3 o'clock in the morning. So for me, it really has been a life changer. So now I'm just going to move on to some of the negatives. So these are things, so I'm going into my 3rd year now. This is my 3rd season contract rearing. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I found a bit hard, or that might be a negative in some people's eyes. So we'll just get into them now. First thing is that they're not your cattle. Obviously it's a pretty self-explanatory thing, but if you need to sell, if you have a big bill coming up, like if your insurance is due or anything like that, when you have your sucklers, your weanlings, you can sell one in the market and you can pay it off, whatever. But with these, obviously that option is gone. They are not your cattle. The second thing with that, moving on from that, is that any big decisions need to be talked through with the owners. Obviously, again, they're not your cattle. You just can't, you can't just do something big like on the breeding side or on the health wise or anything like that without discussing it with them, without consulting them. I'll always ask the lads before I do anything, or if something is sick, I'll always ring them and tell them. Because at the end of the year, they don't want to be left with a big massive vet's bill for something that didn't need to be done. Like if they want to be synchronised at breeding or anything like that, we have to talk that through with them, because that's a big expense. Another thing there is that you have to see yourself as a contractor. It is contract rearing at the end of the day, and you are to the dairyman the same as the man that does the silage, the same as the man that does the slurry. You come in and you're doing a job for them. You are a labour unit for them. So that's one thing you have to have in your mindset, at the back of your mind, is all the time, is that you are, in essence, you're working for somebody else. I'm full-time farming here for myself, and the decisions on my farm, they're to do with me. But the animals are someone else's animals, and that's something that you just have to, and a lot of people just can't get that through their head, or it can't, it's one thing that it kind of puts them off contract rearing because it's not their cattle. But once you have that in your head, it's a very simple thing to overcome. Another thing is that performance wise, you need to keep that animal pushed at all times. Even here for me over the years, like, you know, I've learned that basically you need to keep that animal from the day it comes in to the day it's leaving. You need to keep that pushed animal going. Sometimes they'll not go and calf, sometimes they might get sick and die. The way it's worked through your contract, again, everyone's contract is different, but the first animal is just covered by the owner. Second animal is 50-50, and the third animal, or any animal that dies after that, is you sit down, you put a value on that animal in the contract. So after that, you're liable, because obviously at that stage there's something wrong, or there's something that is prevalent. Now it depends, obviously, if it's some sort of virus that's coming from the home farm or things like that, then obviously it changes, but that's the way we work it here. When it comes to TB, which is a big one, you can actually move them back on a special permit under animal welfare grounds, because obviously if you have 70 animals here, I don't have the calving facilities for 70 animals, so therefore they have to go back to the home farms. That's another thing that people are worried about sometimes when they hear about contract rearing. The thing there is that your tax will increase. Obviously, because there's more money coming into the farm and maybe there's less expenditure, you're more liable for tax. Now, there is ways of getting around it. I see some of the bigger people, they'll set up companies, give themselves a wage out of that. Other people do different things. But for me, tax has to be paid, do you know what I mean? I'll try and invest as much as I can back into the farm, but at the end of the day, if you still have to pay tax, you still have to pay tax. I wouldn't be going out buying a 30 grand tractor just to stave off paying €1,000 tax, because you're paying 8 grand in repayment, so there's no point doing that. But that is another thing you have to allow for. And as well, if you're working off farm, you have to see whether that's going to implicate you off farm, whether you're going to lose, if you're going to go into a different tax bracket or not. It hasn't happened here on my farm, but it is something that you need to think about, is that because you're bringing animals in from a dairy herd or from other herds in, it's the same as if you're buying them in, but it's a thing that people need to have in the back of their heads, that there could be an increased chance that you're bringing in diseases, TB, I don't know, like the mastitis will increase, things like that. You just have to be aware that there is some things that you weren't dealing with before. If you had a closed herd, a closed suckler herd or whatever, that you're bringing in animals every year into your farm, and that can be an issue. I don't really know if this is a negative, but it's something that you kind of need to think about as well when you're going into that, but is that land, ideally, now it doesn't have to be, but ideally if you could have a bit in one block, enough to run your group in one block, it just makes life easier if you're bringing them in and out for AI, or if you're bringing them in for weighing and things like that. Do you know, if you have paddocks and little roadways and everything else in one block, it makes life a whole lot easier. But if you're kind of in fragmented land, I suppose it's the same as if you're farming, suckling or whatever, or dry stock, you're constantly moving cattle around, or it's hard to check them. You need to be checking these every day. Coming from a suckling background, or someone that's dealing with beef, or if you're a pedigree herd or anything like that and you're thinking about contract rearing, it can be hard on your eyes when they first arrive. These animals are no lookers. They're absolutely skinny, scrawny, rotten looking things compared to beef animals that are like, you know, they're kind of nice to look at or whatever. But once you get used to them and realise that how quiet they are and everything, that goes away. But that is one thing that people, and the first thing I thought of when they first came off the truck the first year was, what are these things? But do you know, at the end of the day, that's the type of animal that they are, and that's what they're bred to be like. So you get used to it after a while. Another thing as well is that around May, June and July, your workload will be really increased. Like, if you're contract rearing, more than likely in Ireland, what you'll be doing is your AIing. So whether they're on a programme, you have to be bringing them in and out to synchronise that programme, or whether they're just in heat in big numbers and you're bringing them in like I am this year. Basically morning, noon and night, you're checking them. You're bringing them in and out constantly. In May, then you'll be cutting your silage, because you'll be trying to increase your quality of your silage. So this year, instead of cutting it late May, June, I'm trying to bring it forward to the start of May, middle of May, just to increase the levels so that I can improve my performance. Again, in July, then you'd be looking at bringing in a stock bull then for mopping up. But them 3 months, your summer basically. Look, it's kind of May, June and July is gone really. You kind of need to be able to come to terms with that if you're going into big numbers, is that they're the busiest time of your year. Another thing that I'm trying to get better at and everything, and I said it in a video there at the start of the year, is that the level of detail that is involved with the contract rearing. You can just do it and just kind of let cattle run or whatever way you're doing. But what I'm trying to do is trying to get more into the detail of it, and I have to improve in that constantly. Like that, I'm learning all the time. Daily weight gains. I would have weighed the cattle maybe once or twice a year when I was suckling. I never really thought of daily weight gains or splitting animals into different groups because they're coming back. And then there's different ways then, like some animals might be above target so you can cut them back on meal, and others are below target so you increase their meal, and just different things like, and keeping different groups of animals and different mobs. That never would have crossed my mind before this. EBIs, breeds, things like that. Like, I know that's more of the owner's kind of scene, but at the same time, it's something that I'm interested in and something that I like to learn about. But that is one thing, that is that the level of detail and work will increase, but your opportunities and money will increase along with that. And when the calves come in, is that when they're coming in May or June, obviously the grass is lovely and lush and flush, that they can get summer scours and things like that. So when they come in, you need to be giving them bales of hay or straw or something just to nibble on, just to let their stomachs get used to that fresh grass. You need to keep them going on the meal when they're young. You need to be giving that, because if you're missing a few days or a week with the meal, it upsets their stomach, they get scours. Whereas if you feed them that little bit of meal all the time, it's keeping them going, keeping them ticking, and they're a lot healthier for it. Another thing to worry about is that the dairy stock are a little bit softer than your beef animals. Like, they're hand reared, like I said, which is a positive, but also there can be negative side effects of that as well, because obviously if they're not raised on natural milk or things like that, they can be more susceptible to getting sick. So it's just something you need to be keeping an eye on. Like I said in the last point, you need to be checking them once a day, twice a day, in normal times, and then you want to be checking them at least twice a day during the breeding season. And when they first come in, you want to be checking them 2 or 3 times a day for maybe a month, just to make sure that they're all right. Another negative is that if you're contract rearing, my advice would be not to keep your own stock if at all possible. If you have another bit of land somewhere else where you can keep your own stock, that's fine, but I would not be mixing animals. Again, you could be giving them TB, or those cattle could be being brought in and giving you TB or diseases and things like that. I would not mix animals. So look, there are some of the positives and negatives there to do with the contract rearing. Again, everybody's contract will be different. Everyone's agreements will be different. There's no point saying otherwise. You can be taking them in for the summer and grazing, or you can be taking them in as suck calves and raising them on milk. It all depends. The money wise, you need to sit down and go, how much do I need to be making? And you also need to keep in your head as well that you need to be keeping it, the level of cost to the farmer, you need to be keeping that below what it would cost them to go out and buy a heifer, because if you can keep it lower than that, it makes more sense for them to send animals to you. In my ideas, in my head, the negatives, they're kind of more low end. They're nothing major. I'm so glad now I went into it. Like I said in there a few minutes ago, it totally changed my outlook on farming, and it allowed me there to do something that I like doing. When I was doing the suckling there, I was working and I was frustrated with the farming, and then I was going in and I was frustrated at work, and I wasn't giving my best at either one. Whereas now I really enjoy this now, and it's allowed me to go full time at it and give it my all. So anyone who is thinking about it, I would say, in my personal opinion, go for it, do it. If it's something that you're thinking about, just talk to some dairy lads around you, talk to your advisors or anything like that. But I would be one of the ones that'd be very positive about it. And believe me, I was very anti-dairy, completely and utterly anti-dairy. When I was suckling on beef, I thought they were the devil's spawn. Now that I'm dealing with the cattle and everything, it's life-changing. So if you enjoyed the video anyway, give it a like, subscribe for more. Hopefully next week now the weather will kind of hold up and we get more action done on the farm. But I just thought there that it's a video that I wish I was able to see when I was starting off there at the contract rearing and things like that. And there is more stuff that I learn along the way, and I will share with you. And believe me, there's a lot of mistakes yet to be made, but hopefully all going well. So like I said, subscribe, like the video, and get in touch if you want to know more. So hope you enjoyed. Good luck.